You're listening to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast, where we explore the intersection of people, business, and technology. This year, we're adding a new show to our lineup, the AI Advantage, to help you learn the skills you need to thrive in the AI era.
Welcome to the Copilot Show, where I interview Microsoft staff innovating with AI. I hope you will find this podcast educational and inspire you to do more with this great technology. Now, let's get on with the show. I'm excited to welcome Ryan Cunningham back to the podcast. Ryan is a corporate vice president leading Microsoft Power Platform product and engineering teams. He has been the driving force in the low-code revolution. He was instrumental in launching Power Apps, starting at Microsoft 10 years ago in 2015. He has since grown it into a market-leading low-code platform used by tens of millions worldwide. Under his leadership, the Power Platform has become the epicenter of generative AI wave in biz apps. Over 100,000 organizations use the new AI features to accelerate their work with intelligent apps. In short, Ryan has been at the forefront of empowering everyone, not just professional developers, to build apps. Now he's weaving AI into the fabric of these apps to make them even more innovative and user-friendly. Ryan, thanks for joining me again.
Gosh, you're going to make me blush, Mark. It's great to be back. Thanks for doing what you do.
Well, when I looked at the timeframes, and you came on in episode 71 and episode 329.
Wow.
And today I published episode 683. So you've been here a long while.
You've been prolific at this. This is impressive, yeah.
The thing is, I want to highlight here, this is your 10th year at Microsoft.
It's true, coming up on it, yeah.
Which means a Power Platform, or, being the nexus of being Power Apps, is 10 years old.
We didn't formally launch it in 2015. It
2016,
came a little
right?
later than that, yeah. But actually, the software project that became Power Platform, has been knocking around Microsoft for quite a while longer than that. The dream of kind of getting to the next layer of abstraction and inviting a lot of other people in to write code is something that the company has actually been. It's pretty deep in our DNA. If you go think back to even the core concepts of Visual Basic and then later, things like InfoPath, there's been a really driving idea in Microsoft for a long time. And it's cool to kind of see that generation of it really come to maturity and the next generation of it really start to get off the ground at the same time. So everything feels new again. It feels a lot like 2015, 2016 here in 2025, which is great. It's really energizing.
So 10 years is a fair bit of time.
Yeah.
By my calculations, 8 billion in growth, 8 billion per annum. That's phenomenal, man.
We have managed to create a lot of value for a lot of people. And certainly that's definitely value for Microsoft. But as product people and engineering people, we don't get paid more when a customer signs a deal. We're not salespeople. But the highest mark that product is providing value in the world is that somebody's actually willing to spend resources on it, more than, time is the most precious resource. That's what you care about first. Are people willing to spend time with your product? Are they coming back to it? Are they using it month over month? But then are they actually willing to go to their boss and spend budget on it in a world where that is a very constrained resource? That's a high bar to meet. And meeting it is definitely it's an honor and it's a responsibility, because we know that those resources could go somewhere else. And so it definitely keeps us humble and it keeps us hungry.
Over the 10 years, highlights, struggles, what are you most proud of?
The licensing guide. I kid.
Of course.
I kid. Yes. No, I think when I got here in 2015, a lot of people looked at the software project that became Power Apps, self-included. It was called Project Sienna at the time.
Yeah.
At the time, it was a Windows 8 app for building Windows apps. It wasn't connected to the cloud. It didn't run in a browser. It could do a real impressive demo if you were lucky half the time. And that was about it. And said, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. That seems like a tough challenge to go figure out how to really build a general purpose software development platform at such a higher layer of abstraction. Gosh, that seems like a hard thing to really get off the ground. And the fact that we've managed to do it and really do it together with a community, early on, people looked at it and said, I could use that. And it doesn't do everything I wanted to do right now, but gosh, I could use that for something useful. And I wish it was better, and started to use it and started to create that feedback loop. And we really made it better together month over month, year over year, that has just been a huge career highlight for me to be part of something like that. And I think all of us have a role to play in that. You do as being part of that community too, and being a big mouthpiece for it and bringing people together. Certainly a lot of your listeners do, and everybody else out there that has contributed to the product, whether it's through feedback or advocacy or just being out there and using it. It's been really cool to be part of building something like that. And I think in a way that I didn't understand before I came here, I worked before in consumer tech and much broader scale things, that really to have a relationship with humans on the other side of the screen is a really special thing. If you're building a service for 1 billion consumers, you don't necessarily know Mark Smith. Get to know Mark Smith at episode 75 and 300 and 600. People just look like numbers at a distance, and really to be able to do it where that community does feel in many ways still small and intimate and really caring for each other, that's just been a really cool surprise for me.
It's interesting, the human element of it all, right? Because, it's software, it's tech, and we're in business to make money. But what I've been blown away in my career of what Microsoft has done here is the number of careers it has created really for people.
Yeah.
That never saw themselves as technologists. They came from other skilled backgrounds, but were able to carve out a tech career that has probably been able to allow them to generate for their families earnings beyond what they could have ever dreamed in their previous careers.
Sure.
And that's a phenomenal human element of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And lifted up a lot of their colleagues and coworkers in the same motion.
Yeah.
That's been really cool. Even people who come to it with technology background, right, have been able to kind of use the platform to go create a lot of value in their organizations and in their lives. And that's just been a really neat part of it. And I think, from the outside, business applications are kind of dull and boring. Like, oh, great, the general ledger, that's awesome. It takes a very special kind of mindset to get excited about rows and columns and database integrity and transactional integrity. But A, the whole economy grinds to a halt if this stuff doesn't work. And B, like, we're kind of sitting on the forefront of most information workers' like primary toolkit and day-to-day job experience. And if we can go create a world in which we literally make work better, we've done a lot of good for the planet.
Yeah.
And both in the experience of work, the fulfillment of it, the way that it works so that organizations can be a lot more efficient and effective at their primary thing. And, I would say up until this generation of the technology and the next generation of it, like the core experience of digital work hadn't really changed in a long time. Like we gave the world rows and columns and that was about it. I mean, there's a lot of not great software out there and not great tool sets out there and a lot of inefficiency out there still. And so I think it's a really cool space where, gosh, we've grown a lot. We've created a lot of economic value for Microsoft in the world, but we are still at probably low single-digit percentages of potential impact we can make on the way the world works. So it is tempting to feel like we've summited a mountain, but we are just getting started.
Yeah. One of the things that's always impressed me about you, Ryan, is your ability to tell a business story before the tech story. And whether we call it low code 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, that type of story. And I have definitely over probably the last 7 years represented many of your specific presentations because they resonate at a business level where I believe every software sale needs to happen really at that executive side rather than the IT side of the business and what I've seen long-term success. And you've been able to articulate that kind of business value that wasn't just about look at the interface and let me do a demo, blah, blah, blah type of experience. Right now, what is with intelligent apps in play and that focus now where we're seeing AI permeate everything and the ability or the speed to build a power app is almost you blink and it's done, and I built my first power app using AI while Charles Lamana was presenting at MVP Summit, I think 2 years ago, which was the very first Copilot started appearing, and I created an app for storing seeds. I plant a lot of plants.
Oh, cool.
And I look at the whole germination rates. And while he was presenting this, I logged into our tenant because, you'd given us access as MVPs to it. And I built that app. And I was like, wow, if this is the baby, like, where are we going? And of course, we've come a long way since then. When you think of now the conversations that you're having with business stakeholders, what's that business story you're leaning into? Is it build versus buy? Is it, the app landscape is about to go through fundamentally, the whole forms over data, which James Phillips used to talk a lot about. I can see a world where we'll never see any of that again, right? Almost the UI will be extracted away. It's like, why would we need a grid of records? Why would we need navigation in records anymore? So what's the story you're currently telling executives when you're engaging with them?
So I would say there's really two important parts to this story, and they're deeply interconnected. One of them really is just a very pragmatic conversation about how we spend money on software and why we spend money on software. And I think we need to course correct as an industry. We've spent the last 15, 20 years preaching, don't build anything, buy it all, rent it all from a SaaS company. Or if you're going to build it as a unique one-off butterfly on Kubernetes and containers and microservices and buzzwords of the moment. And, that result has created a lot of goodness. It's created a lot of, great best in class sort of individual point solutions. And it's created a lot of velocity, but it has ended up in a really messy situation for a lot of companies. Gartner estimates the average corporate department pays for at least 8 SaaS services and has 7 more bespoke things they've custom built or maintained. And then that's dozens of other little things that orbit around them. That's one department at a time, and none of them interoperate. None of them play nicely together. Most of them generate cost per user per month. And if not that, cost to maintain and have overhead. And that just doesn't make sense anymore. There's a ton of value in consolidating a lot of that work onto a well-managed platform at every level, from governance, security, and operational, for a single price per dollar, per user per month. So just the idea, what if you could eliminate 20% of your SaaS budget next year? What if you could avoid the cost of legacy modernization, or at least take a massive chunk out of it? Then it's just pure economics. And their time to build something is not really the differentiating factor. It's important, and we have to, that's one place AI plays a huge role with things like the plan designer. How do I make it 10 times easier to take a legacy system or a point solution, tier 2 SaaS product, and recreate it on highly abstracted platform? That's where AI has a huge role to play. And I think that's something that customers are doing right now. And it doesn't even require you to have AI be perfect in every scenario and convince all of your skeptics about it. You can go just get value out of that today. And we have customers deploying hundreds, thousands of workloads on Power Platform with exactly that effort in mind. But that alone is just the base case. That alone you can do assuming no real fundamental changes to the way that work actually happens. And I think that's really not the end of the story. The rest of the story is, well, what about a world in which humans are not doing the majority of information work, and particularly not the low-level information work, the entry of data into forms, the typing into boxes, the manual moving from one system to another? We spend a lot of time still today on very ultimately low value, highly repetitive, low fulfillment types of information work. And a lot of it we do inside our companies. Frankly, a lot of it we outsource to vendors through BPO contracts and budgets. That is a massive opportunity for efficiency. And if you look at those two things together, today, a lot of the traditional business applications exist for highly repetitive manual data entry work that could and should be done, at least in part, by teams of agents. And so the bigger picture here is, how do you actually build for a world in which you're looking for not incremental, 10, 15% productivity gains on your current workforce. You're looking for exponential, 5x, 10x gains on your existing workforce. The only way to do that is to implement a team of digital coworkers and agents around those people. But I think in that world, you need a couple of things. One, you need a plan. How are the agents going to work with the humans? What part is the agent going to do? What part is another agent going to do? How's a human going to get involved in the middle? How do we rethink some of these business processes fundamentally for a world of humans and agents collaborating together? Just a new way to go build for that world. And then I need to be able to actually manage the agents, actually oversee them, and not manage them as a developer. That's one thing, but I need a way to unblock them when they get stuck, when they can't fill out a form, analyze what they're doing in aggregate, give them feedback, train them, coach them, point out trends and analyze them. And frankly, they need to manage me too. Here's places as an agent where I wasn't able to process that form, or I wasn't able to execute that transaction. I need you to do work, human. There's a new interface there between humans and agents. And that's not just chat. Like chat is very useful, but there's a lot of structured interfaces we need to build for AI that are very bespoke, and whole new job roles we need to create around that. Regional agent manager, that type of thing. And that's a world where I think the next generation of low code is going to thrive. And we're already building Power Platform, inclusive of Copilot Studio and all the pieces in it, because I can build my first 5 agents kind of through brute force and in my current setup as a IT shop. I can hire a few more developers. I can, hire a consultant. But God, how am I going to do 500 agents? How am I going to do 1,000 agents in a year? I can't do all those as file, new project, full stack. I have to go do that at a higher level of abstraction. And so for us, the conversation with customers is, number one, just rethink a lot of your current software estate and go drive immediate cost savings right now by getting out of all these unique butterflies and just consolidating a segment of them onto a highly abstracted platform. And while you're doing that, use that platform as a way to rethink the work that gets done in them to not just be human work, but be human and agent work. So now we're not just talking about cut 20% out of your SaaS budget and cut 20% out of your software dev budget. It's also cut 20% out of your BPO budget. And that's usually a 10 times larger budget. And even create that constraint up front. And then go figure out, how do we implement the tools to make it possible to achieve the goal in a tight amount of time? That's really where Power Platform and Copilot Studio thrive in the years ahead. And that's really what we're building the product for right now.
One of the things I've observed with the advent of AI is that there's an element of fear from people. Nobody feared when Teams came about because nobody feared it was going to take their job, right? There's a fear of this. And it's interesting, though, if you look at birth rate data, our birth rate data is not allowing us to replace the current workforce and at its current birth rate. And that's not the Western world, that's the worldwide, right? As in the number of people having 0 children is massively increased over the last 100 years. So it's almost like AI is going to be the savior of so many companies, and that is the resource that we've had in the past. People resource are perhaps not even going to be available in market or in short supply. And I think this tech is going to really enable that gap. One of the things that you've raised there is that as we get more agents that might be doing those repetitive, mundane roles in organizations, and we see those efficiencies come about, the monthly users, so I like this that you're taking out of the SaaS budget, because the monthly active users is theoretically going to decline massively in the coming years as we see agents, take off. And even Bill Gates said years ago, when AI comes about, he was like, we'll have to reinvent a new tax system because there won't be the people to tax. We're going to need to look at technology. So when you're thinking about this, we laughed about the licensing guide. It's almost like that's going to have to be torn up and reinvented, I would expect, in this new world where we go to kind of some type of like tokenization model of whether it's a workflow running or whatever. I like the concept of token because it's already been used from an AI perspective. Is that how we're going to have to rethink licensing?
Gosh, you're setting all kinds of traps for me here, Mark, from the future of the economy to Power Platform licensing. But I will say, we don't have to speculate about the
experiments.
Exactly. We don't have to speculate about the future too much. Like, this is actually how it works right now today. Like today, if I want to go build modern business process applications in Power Platform that have a bunch of agents running behind the scenes and use agents in those apps, I need exactly 2 things. I need a Power Apps license for my human users. I need Copilot Studio capacity for all the agent work.
Yeah, brilliant.
And as the agents do more work, they drive more capacity. And ostensibly, I'm going to get a lot more value as the agents do more work, especially if I've built them and I manage them the right way. And I would say that's also not really a new or shocking idea in technology. I mean, Azure is a massively valuable
cloud
consumption business where I pay for what I use. And over time, the actual cost per unit goes down and the efficacy of what I can do with those units goes up. And I really get to a place where I optimize the scalability of the business based on that. And I'm not purely scaling in a way that's limited to individual humans doing anything, right? And I think that doesn't mean they're not part of the picture. It just means that they're no longer the primary lever in my ability to scale. And then we just call that leverage. And that, that's leverage that we've been getting as a society for hundreds of years of industrialization and mechanization and optimization. This is not a new trend in a lot of ways. It is new because there's new tech that's enabling us to run that play in new areas and new ways. But the general arc of history here is one that we've been down before and continue to go down. And I think we can learn a lot from that. There's a tempting nature for people who spend time on LinkedIn to have everything fetishized as being brand new. But I think those of us who have operated in business applications, especially, and understand unit economics and throughput and productivity, this is a very natural next step in a lot of ways.
I renamed the podcast to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast away from the BizApps podcast because it took me 20 years in this space to realize that BizApps is really an internal word to Microsoft rather than a market-facing word. And I did it because I saw also changes then happening inside Microsoft. How are you re-engineering how the org works from AI has become so prevalent in everything that we do nowadays. Will the concept of business applications exist too much longer? Or is it going to kind of, move into more Azure or M365 as how the org runs and operates? We saw the massive move to engineering go to Mustafa, from the AI, the CEO of AI at Microsoft. What are you seeing changing as you kind of realign to where the market is going?
Yeah, I would say business applications, and especially Power Platform, has always occupied a really interesting central space inside of the Microsoft tech stack. And this is less of an organizational comment and more of just how it's built. We are an abstraction layer over much of the best of what Azure has to offer. When you build a Power App over Dataverse or a Copilot Studio agent and you deploy it on Power Platform, you're abstracting away dozens and dozens of underlying Azure services that all run at incredibly high reliability and availability and excellent performance. And you didn't have to micromanage all those pieces yourself. So it's just a pre-assembly of a lot of those great components. But then in turn, we build that into a lot of our most widely used productivity experiences. And that's been true for a long time. It's been true since 2016, and a button in SharePoint to go create a Power App or a Power Automate flow. It certainly continues to be true today with things like embedded agent builder, powered by Copilot Studio inside of M365 Copilot, inside of SharePoint, those types of things. In fact, it's probably more true than ever now, the extent to which that productivity experience is just naturally extended with the platform, and particularly with Copilot Studio. And then in turn, we build a lot of our own, CRM and ERP applications sort of natively on that platform. And that's been a huge advantage to the platform to really harden it and extend it and make it great. Apps have always needed platforms and vice versa to really thrive. And so you end up occupying this really interesting part of the company where you kind of have to bring together all the pieces to succeed. And if you waver too far into only one end of those extremes, then you actually start to lose what's special about bringing them all together.
Yeah.
If you look at the rest of the market, actually, I think this is why some other large competitors have actually really struggled in this space. To a world where there are only either consumers or developers and nothing in between, it's culturally hard to craft that middle path. And business applications by nature, and particularly platforms, have sort of forced that middle path to really bring those two ends of the spectrum together, having a great set of developer tools and cloud services and a great set of productivity tools for business people, and a world in which they meet. That's a really special place in which to be able to build and thrive in one of these platforms.
Yeah. Is the Power Platform now the ultimate vibe platform?
This is the
vibe coding.
Vibe coding, yes. I was doing some vibe coding this morning. Actually, it's My controversial opinion is that vibe coding is a term software people started using to be more comfortable talking about low code without actually having to use that word. But no, I mean, I think this is, again, the mission the platform has been on for a decade or more is shorten the distance between a human with an idea or a need and instructions to computers. And the first generation of that tech was with dragging and dropping and highly abstracted languages like PowerFX. And we shortened that distance quite a bit, but it still wasn't like instant short. And now we're at a point where I can talk to technology and have real code generated. And it's amazing. It's really cool what's possible there. And I think, you're not wrong. Like, the good part of vibe coding is don't have to overthink all the micro details. Focus on the problem, focus on the value you want to create, and frankly, delegate the details to layers of abstraction where they should be better figured out. I would say the anti-pattern, or I would say less responsible pattern, is kind of taking that to the extreme of just, I'm going to ignore every error message and not care about code quality and just, kind of brute force my way through a barely working prototype just to see what I can make here. That's actually super fun on a Saturday afternoon. That's not a way that we're going to go build the next, production system for managing a supply chain. And I think Power Platform actually allows you to craft a really important middle ground. I can build over very robust and mature data constructs, data connectivity in a secure environment with great governance and oversight, with developer lifecycle built in. But I can have this very expressive creative experience where the cost to create a new agent or application or solution is much lower than it was before. And therefore, my willingness to iterate and be creative is much higher than it was. If it took me a year or it took me 3 years to go deploy an ERP system, then I darn well must have gotten it right on the first try. If it takes me 3 hours, then I can afford to be wrong. And that's a huge luxury in software, to be able to afford to be wrong and learn from it and iterate and move very, very quickly. And so I think that's really what was setting up Power Platform and Copilot Studio to be, is that innovation platform, or particularly around business process, where you can just move very fast and improve very quickly.
As we go to wrap up, the future of the maker, the citizen developer, the developer on the Power Platform, I talked about menus and grids and things like that in the way we've traditionally done software in the past. And I see that things like Power Automate, PowerFX, a lot of the tooling that we use to build solutions on the Power Platform are all going to be, somehow abstracted away from us being hands-on those tools. I think that my observation is the tools will persist, but there will be this kind of, once again, the new way of building solutions using natural language. Does that mean, and I'm leading you here because I'm trying to encourage makers, I notice this observation that there's people that are all in on AI that are, and Satya made a good quote in Italy recently where he said, you can't go to the gym and expect to build muscle watching other people work out. And he was saying, same with AI, you can't be a theoretical AI person. You can't, sit on the sidelines and either say it's wrong or say it's good, but you need to be hands-on in using it. And I'm just wondering, there's this need for people to really go, hey, this is the direction the world's going in our community. Do you really need to start developing your AI skills properly? Because the more I spend in AI, and I'm prompting now for hours, and I go away and, I have a model work on something, and I am learning so much from this process. And I would hate to have, wake up in 3 years' time and realize the cheese moved.
Right.
And I didn't see it moving. And I didn't redevelop my skills for a future world.
Yeah. Look, I've been watching sports for years and I haven't gotten any better at them. So I think the Satya quote is very wise. I think
yeah.
I will also say, in a time of great change, it is generally better to be early and a little wrong than it is to be late. Because being a little wrong is the only way you get more right, and the only way you learn, and the only way you evolve. And if you wait for everything to be perfect, then somebody else is going to get there much faster than you. And I think this company definitely takes that to heart. That we turned 50 this year. There's not a lot of tech
Yeah.
companies that are 50 years old and still dominant in their markets. And it's in part because we have been willing to evolve through times of great change and do the hard thing to make that transition. Sometimes not well and sometimes not perfectly, but willing to do it and willing to take on that challenge, and especially determined to do that right now. And I would say that's true for every customer organization as well. Every other organization out there that thinks that this AI stuff is not for me, I guarantee you there's a startup that was born in the last 12 months or will be born in the next 12 months that's coming for you. That's going to figure out how to do it 10 times cheaper, 10 times better, 10 times faster. And they will look inferior at the beginning, but it will look different in a few years. And so if you're not on that arc as well, it's going to be tough. And that's really the rub here, especially when it comes to how we operate our core businesses and business processes. There's just so much room for improvement, so much room for upside. And if you're waiting for it to be kind of perfect, you're waiting too long. If you're saying, how do I get a little bit better tomorrow, and then a little bit better the day after that, and then a little bit better the day after that, that's really the mentality to get into it. And I think that's a big mindset shift for business software people. It used to be that you've worked in the consulting world for years, that a big business implementation project had a start date and an end date. There was a day in which the software was done. The software's not done anymore. It's like, how do we create constraint in these worlds and then empower people with tools and then just constantly iterate and get better every month, every week, every day? That's really the path to greatness here. And that requires getting your hands dirty. It requires doing some things that might not pan out. It requires being wrong and then being willing to learn from that and be more right tomorrow. And that is the only way we've been building these products. It's the way we continue to build them. It is also the only way that we see customers really getting an edge in AI. And again, that's the core thesis of the platform. That's why we're building a Copilot Studio and a Power Platform. So the cost of that iteration is feasible, that I can move fast. I don't have to reinvent everything from scratch. I can focus on my core business and leave the platform bits to Microsoft, but get in there and build stuff and learn from it and put it into production and then adjust it and make it better. That's really the whole thesis of the platform for the next decade in a nutshell.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. Is there a guest you would like to see on the show from Microsoft? Please message me on LinkedIn and I'll see what I can do. Final question for you. How will you create with Copilot today? Ka kite.
Are you ready to accelerate your career in the Microsoft ecosystem? The 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, created by Mark Smith, is your opportunity to create a personalized pathway to success. Join over 1,200 alumni from more than 70 countries who have achieved remarkable results, from promotions to new job opportunities. Take it from Nathan, who said, since completing the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, I've become an MVP in business applications and doubled my income. Or from Parvez, who shares, I've never felt as inspired or energized about my career as I do now. Sign up at arcor.nz365guy.com. You can find the link in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast, you'll get 10% off.